Hello there, and welcome once more to recording of 5 Homes to Freedom. We're continuing with Module 1. We're going to be talking about the how. So this is Lesson 3 on how to buy. So during this lesson, we're going to be looking at the 5 steps to purchase. We're going to be talking about working with a realtor. We'll be reviewing some real estate contracts, and then we'll wrap up by writing the offer and negotiating. So in the earlier lessons, we talked about the high ranch is the style of property that we're looking to purchase. We also recognize that we're going to be going after the middle income bracket. That's the price point of $250,000 to $400,000 price range for the houses that we're looking at. And that's going to generate the profit or a cash flow in the $600 to $700 per month price point, and that's ideal for our five homes to freedom strategy. So where are we going to find these properties? We talked about the different cities and neighborhoods. We identified that it was the middle income neighborhood that is most appealing and will work best for us. We also talked about the neighborhood features that we're looking for, which include but not restricted to having an extremely low crime rate, having the parks and schools for the kids, shopping for the parents, and transit for those who are still working. So these are the important features that you need to be looking for when you're trying to decide where to buy. So the 5 steps that we're going to be looking at to purchase the home. Step number 1, identifying the market you want to invest in. And again, for the first 3 steps here, we've already talked about them in earlier lessons. But you need to identify what market you're going to be investing in and really do a lot of research once you decide on that market as to what the property values are, so you know what a good deal is when you see an opportunity presented to you, so that you're able to act on it very quickly and with confidence. Also, know and understand who your renters are going to be. Are you looking for the seniors? Are you looking for the younger crowd, the new homeowners? Be very clear on your target market. Then you're going to be talking about, or you're going to be building your team. We're going to be talking about this in another lesson coming up here very shortly. But you need to make sure you've got your property management teams in place, especially for long distance management, before you even start the process of buying. And you need to make sure you've got the good real estate agent looking for you. And you need to have your inspector and handy person sort of on the sidelines ready to go when you find yourself a good deal. So what we're going to talk about for the rest of today's lesson is to actually start making some offers. So let's just jump right in and in making an offer. One of the biggest questions or most frequent questions I get, do I even need to use a real estate agent? And the simple answer is no. However, I strongly recommend that you do use a real estate agent because a realtor is licensed and trained to understand the whole process, all of the contracts that are involved. They're there to protect your interest in the transaction. Once you've gained some experience yourself, you can decide whether you need to use a representative for you personally, or maybe you want to use the listing realtor, thinking that you can negotiate a better deal because you might be able to negotiate a lower commission. That's not a bad strategy. However, you need to realize that listing realtor is truly representing the seller, and they're not representing you. So just be aware of that. With respect to your for sale by owners, or what we call a FSBO, only represent yourself once you have lots of experience. And if you're going to do that, I strongly urge you to include a condition clause that it's subject to your lawyer's review, just to protect yourself, to make sure you're not getting into something that's illegal or improper and you're not getting stuck. So let's take a look at some of the contracts that you're going to be dealing with. One of the first contracts that you're going to be presented with, and it's not really a contract, it's more of an information form, and it's an agreement or a document that explains the different types of representation. So you've got seller's representation, buyer's representation. It explains how the agent's going to work with the seller, or the agent's going to work with the buyer, and what you can expect from your agent as well. And then what happens when there's a multiple representation, when you deal directly with the listing agent. Now that agent is going to be dealing with both the seller and the buyer. How does that work? So this document explains all the ins and outs, how that works. So you want to understand that very, very clearly. FINTRAC is it's not necessarily a new document, but it's becoming more and more prevalent across the board. And this is a document that basically follows the money, and it's an individual identification document. So every person that's involved in the purchase of a contract of a property has to complete this contract. You have to provide your full legal information, your name and address, provide proof that that is your legal name and address. Then you also have to state where you work, what the purpose of this investment is for, and the whole purpose is to eliminate the potential for money laundering or funding of illegal activities. So the contract is simply all about the money. The next contract we'll look at is what we call a buyer's representation agreement. You may or may not like this. I personally do not like completing one either as an agent or as a buyer. And what it is an agreement between the buyers looking for properties and the realtors that's representing the buyer. And it can simply explain the relationship between the two people, but more importantly, what it does is it ties the buyer to that particular agent. So I understand the purpose of the agreement, and the purpose is to protect the real estate salesperson who has just spent several weeks, maybe even several months, spending a lot of time looking for properties, showing you properties, and then you turn around and you buy a property from somebody else, another real estate agent. And that original agent has spent all this time, money, and effort trying to fulfill their contract with you, and then you do the deal with somebody else. So it's to protect the interests of the agent. However, as I say, I don't like it because I don't like being tied to an agent. I don't like to have my clients feel like they're tied to me. I prefer to work on a relationship basis. And the bottom line is, you know, some brokerages and sister agents have these agreements completed. Some they leave it up to the individual real estate agent whether they complete them or not. And the reality is, it's not even, I think it's going to eventually die off because I don't think these agreements can be upheld in a court of law if and when they're ever challenged. Just to be aware of, anyways. The next agreement or contract is a confirmation of cooperation, and this is a contract or a document that gets completed once an offer has been put in place. And it quite simply just explains the commissions that are being paid, who's collecting them, what percentage is being given to the agent, the selling agent, or the buyer's agent, sorry. So the person representing you, it'll show how that agent is being paid, how much they're being paid, and you sign off on it saying that you agree that your agent is being paid by the seller, and you initial that, and it's just to provide full disclosure. The next contract that we're going to take a look at is the actual purchase and sale agreement itself. Now, a purchase and sale agreement can quite simply be a blank piece of paper, one sheet of paper, as long as it contains the legal names of both parties, the buyers and the sellers, the legal and municipal address of the property, the price that you're paying for it, the deposit details, any inclusions, exclusions, etc., and then signatures of both parties. As long as it has that, it's a legal binding agreement. Now, I would never recommend anybody use something as simple as that. You are most likely 99.9% of the time going to be using an agreement that's created by your local real estate board, which contains everything I just mentioned previous, but it's also going to contain pages of legal jargon, which I highly recommend that you read with your realtor. The reality is that most people just skim through it. Very rarely do people actually read it and understand it. So definitely take the time to read it and understand it at least once. And anytime you use new documents, make sure you read them over as well. Along with the purchase and sale agreement, you're going to have schedules, and they're usually lettered. schedules. So you have Schedule A, B, C, D. You can have as many schedules as you need. And the whole purpose of the schedules is to provide additional space that you may not have in the original purchase and sale agreement for any inclusions or any other information that's relevant to the actual purchase of that property. In my particular board, we need Schedule A to put in all of the clauses such as financing, inspection, anything related to, we're looking for information about the property, we would put that in Schedule A. In some contracts in different boards, they have it built into the purchase and sale agreement, space for the financing and inspection as well. So you may not even need Schedule A or B to be attached to it. Then we have the amendment. So what an amendment is when you have an agreed upon purchase contract, it's still subject to conditions, and you want to make a change to the contract. As long as both sides of both parties agree to the changes, then what you have to do is you have to complete an amendment, and both parties sign the amendment. That amendment is then sent off to both lawyers and to the lender as well, so that everybody involved in the transaction sees that there's been a change, a mutually agreed upon change to the original contract. Once, as you're going through the process of buying that property, it's going to be subject to financing, subject to inspection, etc. As these conditions are fulfilled, you will then complete a notice of fulfillment for each individual condition, or if they all fall due on the same date, then you would have one notice of fulfillment for all conditions. And once that notice of fulfillment has been completed, that means the contract is now legally and binding, and that you can't get out of the deal unless both sides agree to allow you to get out of the deal, and you have to go through with the whole transaction and close on the deal. We'll talk quickly a little bit about commissions and how the agents are actually paid, just to make sure that you have clarity on this, so that you don't, well, first of all, you respect what your realtor is doing for you. Also, if you are trying to renegotiate a deal, and expect that the commissions can be adjusted. First of all, the seller is responsible, typically the seller is responsible to pay a commission to the listing brokerage. It's not to the agents, it's to the listing brokerage. And it's usually in the form or the amount of 4 to 5% of the total sales price. If there is a different brokerage that sells the property, then the listing brokerage will pay to the selling brokerage a percentage of that total commission, and it's usually split 50-50. When there's a for sale by owner, there's no agents involved for either the seller or the buyer, then there's potentially no commissions, and that's all good and fine for both sides. There's some money being saved. However, I consider that to be very risky, because especially if you don't have a lot of experience as a buyer, you don't know what you're getting into. You want to make sure that you're being represented correctly, and that everything is being truthful from the seller side as well. So if you're going to bring your own agent into the equation, then your agent's going to have to speak with that for sale by owner to try and negotiate the seller to pay the commission. The seller may or may not agree. They may agree to split the commission, so that the agent may agree to do it for a lower commission. Who knows? But you may have to split the commission between the seller and the buyer. So sometimes the buyer will have to pay the commission as well. When you're dealing with a discount brokerage, this is where a seller can list their properties on MLS through some of these, like a Grapevine or discount brokerage, 1% realty, whatever. They are not represented by the brokerage, other than they are allowed to use the brokerage to list their property on MLS for a fee. That's about the extent of the representation. These individuals don't have to follow the same set of rules that the conventional real estate or brokerage has to follow out there. So you need to be very, very careful when you're dealing with these types of brokerages, because they can change the rules and you really have no recourse. So what should you expect from your agent that's representing you? Well, first of all, your agent needs to have a very strong understanding of the local market so that they understand what the true property values are, because you are relying on their expertise to know whether that's a good price or not. You also want to rely on their experience. These people will have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of properties over their years of working as a real estate agent. So they're going to have seen a lot more out there than you ever will experience. These people have to operate at a very high level of standards, honesty, loyalty, ethical practice, and they need to have your interest first and foremost. So you need to feel comfortable with your agent. Now, what not to expect from your agent? Well, quite simply, these individuals have been trained to sell real estate in the conventional market. 99% of the realtors have no experience with investments, either personally or with real estate investors. There are lots of really good realtors out there who do have the experience and the knowledge, and that's great if you can find one of those people, but don't expect that from the average realtor out there. These people, they've been taught about creative terms and conditions, but that's not their primary focus. Just recently, Joanne and I came across a realtor with 15 years experience who had no idea what VTB stood for. And VTB means vendor take-back mortgage or secondary financing. So that just gives you an idea of the level of experience these people have. All right, so you're getting ready to write the offer. Do you actually visit the property first or not? Well, if you're investing long distance, it's going to be very difficult for you to go out looking at properties to find a property to invest in. It's going to be costly, time consuming. So this is where you need to rely on your team, your real estate agent in particular, because they're going to be your eyes and ears. You may need to go and visit and interview the agent and go look at properties once or twice initially, just so your realtor knows and understands what it is you're actually looking for. If they grasp this and they send you a listing that fits your criteria, do you take the time to go out, drive 4 or 5 hours to go visit it or fly across the country to go and check it out? No. What you do is you actually put it under contract without seeing it first. Even when you're buying locally, do you really need to go and see that property first? Again, you educate your realtor to only send you properties that fit your criteria. Don't waste your time, don't waste the realtor's time looking at properties every weekend. These searches can be done automatically by your realtor so that they filter them out and just send you the properties that are of interest. Once you see a property that fits your criteria, it's going to take you 2 or 3 days to go see it. Well, in the meantime, there's other people looking for similar properties. They'll go out and they'll snap it up before you get there. The moment you see that property, I suggest you actually make the offer on the property. You can always make it subject to a viewing after you have an accepted offer in place. So now you're ready to write the offer. Well, what price do you actually offer for this? Now, as investors, a lot of people focus on instant equity. They want to get the price at the best possible price. That bothers me a little bit because I like to offer fair price and make it a win-win for everybody. In a balanced market, people can expect that the houses will sell for 95 to 98% of the purchase or the asking price. Now, a balanced market means there's an equal number of listings and an equal number of buyers out there in the market. If you have what we call a buyer's market, where there's a lot of listings available but very few buyers, in that particular case, then you can expect to maybe get a final purchase price in the 90% of the asking price range. On the flip side, if it's a seller's market where there's very few properties available but there's lots of buyers, then you get into a buying frenzy and you can get 100% or higher of the market price. So what should you actually offer? I would strongly urge you never to offer less than 90% of the asking price unless the property truly is worth less than, it hasn't been priced properly in the first place. But if it's truly worth what they're asking for, then I would never go in lower than 90% because what you're going to do is you're going to insult the seller and you're going to really tick off the listing agent as well. And now you've got two people who don't even want to sell it to you, and you're trying to negotiate a better deal. Even if you were prepared to come up to 95% and you went in at 80 or 85%, it's going to be very difficult to work with these people moving forward. Plus, you want a good relationship with these people during the whole process. So I strongly suggest you offer at 90% or better. Then you also have to take into consideration that the vast majority of the real estate transactions that we're going to be dealing with here with our students are going to be in smaller markets. And so I'm talking about markets of 100,000 population or less. And agents talk, and there's very few. Even in a city of 1 million people, you might have 3,500 agents. Well, even in a market like that, you get to know all of the other agents. And in the smaller markets, you may only have 300 or 400 agents in that particular board, and you don't want to be known as the agent that offers lowball offers all the time. You're just not going to have a good relationship. Therefore, you want to make sure that you don't put your agent in that predicament. The bottom line is, and this is my personal belief, is that you don't really need to be greedy in this game to win, because this program is structured to make you a winner without having to lowball offers. It's paying fair market price, and you're going to become a winner despite the price that you pay. Next, what deposit do you actually provide when you make the offer? Again, a lot of real estate investors believe that you offer as little as possible for that down payment, the initial deposit, not the down payment, rather. So to make it a legal binding contract, you do have to have some money exchange hands, so it can be as little as $1. But realistically, when you're looking at single-family homes, you're probably looking at $1,000 to $5,000 price point. If you want to go on the low side, but the seller insists on a higher deposit, then what you can do is you can provide an initial deposit, small deposit of $1,000, and upon the conditions being removed, you can increase that deposit to $5,000, $10,000, whatever is going to be required to make the seller happy. I don't mind doing that because at that point, I'm going to be buying the property anyways if I remove the conditions. These deposit checks should be held in trust by either the listing or the selling brokerage. It's usually held in trust by the listing brokerage. That's just the way things normally go. If you are dealing privately like with FSBOs or even with the discount brokerages, quite often the seller will say that they want the deposit check paid to them. Never give it to the seller. Always, if there's no licensed legitimate brokerages in place here, then give it to a lawyer, preferably your own lawyer, but it can also be the lawyer representing the seller as well, and it will be held in trust then. Then we have the terms and conditions, and if you're buying this property sight unseen initially, then one of the conditions you're going to want to have in there is an initial inspection within 3 to 4 days after acceptance of that offer. Now, obviously, if it's further away, you may need a little bit more time, but the reality is no seller is going to accept an offer with an initial inspection of 7 days, 8 days, because that just ties up their property and prevents them from selling it to somebody else, and they don't even know if you're serious about it yet or not. If you don't have the need for that initial inspection, you definitely want to have it satisfactory upon financing. Also, upon obtaining satisfactory building inspection, and that's satisfactory to you in your sole and absolute discretion. So it's not open to debate. You also may want to consider insurance. Now, if you're trying to keep your deal as clean and tight as possible with as few conditions, you can drop the insurance one potentially. You still want to make sure you can get insurance, but make sure you still have that building inspection and financing inspection in there, bare minimum. And that's to be expected by most sellers as well. So that's easily achieved. You also want to include all the appliances, the fridge, stove, washer, dryer, dishwasher if it's portable, the microwave, all the window coverings, the lawnmower, the garden tools, anything and everything you can find, you want to include that. You also want to try and identify something of personal or sentimental value to the seller. This is this is a negotiating tactic. So you find something that's of sentimental value to them and you ask for that to be included as well. Even if you have no real need or interest in obtaining that, maybe it's a pool table, for example. So you know that that's something that they want to keep that wasn't included in the deal initially anyways, but you ask for it now. So it's called the law of reciprocity. In negotiations, if you ask for all these things, but you don't really need them all, but you're willing to give some of them back, everybody needs to feel like they're winning. So if you can take the focus off the price and give them something back in exchange, then they're feeling like they're winning and can say, well, fine, you can have I'll take the pool table out, but I'm sticking to my price. So now you've deferred their attention away from the price onto all of these other things. So it's a law of reciprocity, give and take. All right, now the offer has been accepted. You've done your initial walkthroughs to assess whether this property is truly viable for what it is you want to do, and you look at the cost for conversion. And if it's good, you move forward. You then do your building inspection, and you do this while you're actually applying for your financing. The building inspection is going to have a cost to it, so you do that relatively early on so that you can identify things that are wrong with the property. If there's some major issues with the property, you can then use that to go back and renegotiate. Now you have to keep in mind that this inspection clause is not there for the intent of renegotiation. It's a good faith clause. It's there to make sure that the property truly is of value. However, 99% of the times it is used for renegotiation purposes. So you're looking for to deal with issues, big ticket items. You're not concerned about the color of the electrical plates, or this plug didn't work. That's not a big deal. It's a good thing to identify that needs to be rectified, but that's not necessarily something you're going to go back and renegotiate for. However, if the age of the roof or the condition of the roof needs to be repaired, the windows, furnace, air conditioner, hot water tank, all these big ticket items, if there's issues there, then you've got grounds to renegotiate. So during the renegotiation process, what you want to do is you want to try and get the price adjusted down to include new shingles or a new furnace, a new hot water tank. And the reality is the seller may include some of these upgrades in the original price, or they may discount the price to compensate you for having to do the work. What we would prefer is that they actually get the work done for you. And even if you have to increase the purchase price, so let's use a furnace for example. Let's say a new furnace is going to cost $5,000. You've agreed to purchase the property for $300,000. They've agreed to reduce the price to $295,000. You say, no, well, let's leave the price at $300,000, but you put a new furnace in. That's good. That's the way you want to have it done. So now you've got that new furnace installed when you buy that property. Well, let's say they don't agree to drop the price and they don't agree to put the new furnace in. You say, well, okay, well, let's increase the price to $305,000 and put the furnace in. The seller still gets their $300,000, so it's no sweat off their back. And it's still a win for you because now you've purchased that property with a new furnace. That's one less thing that you have to take care of when you buy the property. It's now been financed for you as well, so you don't have to come up with the cash. The whole goal here is to end up with a property that has all of the major capital costs taken care of so that you don't have to worry about any major costs for the next 10 years. If your roof has new shingles, a new furnace, hot water tank, good windows, etc., you've got 10 years of easy going with respect to the capital expenses. All right, so now we take a look at the financing. So during the financing process, most people focus on the low interest rate, getting the best rate possible. Well, I would suggest that that's fine, but the reality is when you focus on low interest rates, you also get stuck with some pretty interesting terms, not so good for you. So you want to make sure that the terms are really good for you, because in the 5 Homes to Freedom program, the whole point of the program is to pay down the debt as quickly as possible. So you want to have a mortgage that allows you to pay large sums of money on an annual basis, or allows you to increase your monthly payments annually with no limitations. These are terms that are more important to you than the interest rate itself. Then we have what we call terms. So for example, if we've negotiated that the seller is going to replace the shingles, the furnace, the hot water tank, etc., these are no longer conditions, but they become terms of the agreement. And the term is, it means that the seller has to install that new furnace to your standards prior to closing, failing which you will do a holdback in until such time that the work has been done. So these are terms. We now make it to closing day. Now on closing day, what you want to do is you want to remove all of the appliances that are not built in and take them to an off-site storage location. Then you're going to start your renovations as quickly as possible, and you're most likely going to be looking at 2 to 3 months turnaround in order, it depends on the degree of renovations obviously, but to install a suite in the basement, to do it properly, it's going to take a minimum of 3 months, and you want to be well prepared, have your team ready to go the day of closing. You also want to start the rental process right away, knowing that the good tenants are going to require more time to be found, but also they're going to have to give notice from wherever they are currently living. So it's going to take time to find good quality tenants. If you have a tenant who's ready to skip rent on the other house, just so they can get into your place within the first month, that's not necessarily going to be a good tenant for you. Once you've started the rental process, you're going to rent the units without appliances. And this is why you're going to remove all the appliances to an off-site location immediately, because you don't want to start doing showings and have the tenant see that there's appliances there. You rent it without appliances, and when the tenants say, well, I need appliances, you can then offer to sell them the appliances that you just removed at a great discount. So if you have a fridge, you can say, well, I can sell you a fridge for $300 and I can sell you the stove for $200. You need a washer and dryer, I can sell those to you as well. You sell them at a very affordable price. But the beautiful thing about this is you now have downloaded all of these maintenance costs onto the tenant as well without them even realizing it. They now own the appliances. So when the fridge breaks down, you're not going to get that call on a Saturday afternoon because the fridge broke down, and it's going to become your responsibility to repair or replace that refrigerator. It's going to be their responsibility to do that. Same thing with the washer and dryer. Tenants do not take good care of washers and dryers. They overload them. They abuse them. So now all of a sudden it's their appliance, their problem when it breaks down. So this tip alone can save you thousands and thousands of dollars in headaches. All right, so let's wrap up today's lesson with a little bit of a homework assignment. So because we have students spread out across the country, different real estate boards across the country, what I want you to do is to contact the realtor that's going to be representing you in whatever market that you're purchasing in, and ask them to provide you a blank purchase and sale agreement, the buyer representation agreement, the FinTrack agreement, all of these agreements and documents that we've talked about already, so that you can become familiar with these documents. So when it comes time to actually do the work, you're ready to go. All right, so that's your homework assignment, and that's the end of today's lesson. So hope you enjoyed it. A lot of information there. I went very, very quickly. Go back and review it as often as you want, and we'll see you for lesson number 4.